The screaming began at 2:17 in the morning. Not one scream. Hundreds. Every telephone inside the village of Graythorne started ringing at the exact same second while families slept beneath pounding rain. Mothers woke to children crying. Dogs tore through wooden doors trying to escape into the storm. Then, without warning, every church bell across the village exploded into deafening noise despite nobody touching the ropes. The bells rang so violently that blood dripped from several bronze clappers. Villagers rushed outside carrying lanterns, only to discover something horrifying standing near the cemetery gates. A woman, barefoot, completely soaked by rain. Her head tilted unnaturally sideways, and stitched across her mouth was black thread. She stood motionless beneath the flickering street lamp for nearly 20 seconds before whispering in a voice no human throat should have produced. He opened the door. Then she vanished, not walked away. Vanished. The next morning, 12 graves inside St. Bartholomew's Cemetery were found empty, not dug up, open from the inside. Graythorne sat along the northern coast of England, surrounded by cliffs sharp enough to tear ships apart during storms. Fog rolled through the village almost every evening, swallowing roads and rooftops until the world beyond the harbor disappeared entirely. Most outsiders avoided the place because of old stories passed through generations. Fishermen claimed strange figures wandered the shoreline during winter tides. Elderly residents spoke about whispers beneath the earth whenever heavy rain fell. Yet nobody discussed the true secret hidden below Graythorne Hill, because speaking about it invited attention, and attention invited her. Elias Whitmore arrived in the village 3 days after the graves opened. A London journalist with tired eyes and a reputation for exposing frauds, Elias believed Graythorne's terrifying rumors were simply another case of mass hysteria. His editor wanted headlines. Dead rising from graves sold newspapers quickly. So Elias boarded the Northern Railway expecting frightened villagers and foolish superstition. Instead, he found terror, real terror. Nobody smiled in Graythorne. Nobody spoke loudly. Every house kept curtains tightly shut even during daylight. Strange symbols made from salt appeared outside doors and windows. Children were forbidden from leaving home after sunset. Most disturbing of all, the village church remained packed day and night with citizens praying desperately beneath candlelight. Elias noticed bruises beneath people's eyes, as though nobody had slept properly for weeks. The innkeeper, Margaret Henshaw, refused to let Elias wander outside after dark. "You hear knocking," she warned quietly while locking every window inside the inn. "Do not answer." Elias laughed softly. "What exactly am I supposed to be afraid of?" Margaret stared toward the blackened window behind him. "The woman beneath the cliff." Thunder shook the building. Then came 3 knocks at the front door. Everyone inside the inn froze instantly. No one moved. The knocking returned. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Margaret's face lost all color. "Do not open it." Another knock echoed through the hallway. Then a woman's voice whispered from outside. "Please let me in. I can't see my face anymore." One old man near the fireplace began sobbing uncontrollably. Elias stepped toward the entrance despite Margaret grabbing his sleeve. He swung the door open. Nobody stood there. Only darkness. Rain hammered the empty street while fog drifted across the cobblestones, yet something felt horribly wrong. Elias noticed wet footprints leading into the inn, not away from it, into it. The lanterns suddenly extinguished. Every single one. The entire building plunged into darkness. Then came the sound. Dragging, slowly moving across the wooden floor upstairs, a woman humming softly. Margaret screamed. Guests scattered through the inn while Elias grabbed a lantern and rushed toward the staircase. The humming continued above him, growing louder with every step. He reached the upper corridor and saw water dripping from the ceiling despite clear roof tiles overhead. At the far end of the hallway stood a tall figure wearing a rotted black dress. Long strands of soaked hair covered her face entirely. The woman slowly lifted one shaking hand toward Elias. Her fingers bent backward with cracking noises. Then she whispered, "Tell them she's awake." Every door upstairs slammed shut simultaneously. The figure disappeared. Elias searched every room. Nothing, no footprints, no broken window, no hiding place. Only one thing remained behind. A puddle of seawater filled with dead black feathers. The following morning, Elias visited St. Bartholomew's Cemetery alongside the village priest, Father Benedict Hale. The old priest looked exhausted beyond words. Deep claw marks scarred both his hands. "She existed long before Graythorne," Benedict explained quietly while leading Elias toward the empty graves. "Long before Britain itself." At the center of the cemetery stood an enormous stone cross wrapped entirely in iron chains. Fresh candles surrounded it alongside dozens of dead ravens nailed upside down into the soil. "What is this?" Elias asked. The priest hesitated, then finally answered. "Her prison." Over 2 centuries earlier, Graythorn suffered unexplained disappearances during the winter of 1801. Villagers vanished from locked homes overnight. Entire fishing crews disappeared from boats drifting near the cliffs. Survivors spoke about a pale woman wandering the shoreline carrying a lantern made from human bone. According to legend, she lured people into sea caves beneath the cliffs, where something ancient waited in darkness. One night, local miners discovered tunnels buried deep beneath Graythorn Hill. Hidden inside stood ruins older than recorded history. Strange carvings covered the walls depicting a faceless woman surrounded by kneeling figures without eyes. At the center of the ruins rested a stone coffin sealed by iron chains. The miners opened it. Every single one vanished before sunrise. Days later, their bodies washed ashore along the coast, without faces, no skin, nothing but smooth flesh covering empty skulls. That was when villagers realized the woman was not a ghost. She was something far older, something worshipped, something buried alive beneath Graythorn centuries ago. Father Benedict explained that priests eventually trapped the entity using sacred iron driven through the coffin lid before sealing the tunnels forever beneath the cemetery cross. For generations, the prison remained untouched. Until last month, a storm collapsed part of the cliffside, opening the tunnels again. Elias wanted proof, real proof, so despite every warning, he convinced Benedict to guide him beneath Graythorn Hill that night. Armed with lanterns and trembling courage, they descended through narrow tunnels hidden behind the cemetery crypt. The deeper they traveled, the colder the air became. Strange, scratching noises echoed through the stone passages around them. Then Elias noticed the walls. Thousands of names carved into rock, some fresh, some ancient, all crossed out. "What are these?" he whispered. Benedict looked terrified. "Victims." The tunnel opened into a massive underground chamber filled with seawater reaching their ankles. Black candles floated across the surface despite no visible flame source. At the chamber's center stood the coffin. The chains were broken. Something moved behind them. Elias turned slowly. Dozens of people stood silently inside the darkness surrounding the chamber. Villagers, missing villagers, their skin looked gray and swollen from seawater, every face completely smooth. No eyes, no mouths, no noses, only blank flesh. Father Benedict began praying desperately while backing away. The faceless figures tilted their heads simultaneously toward Elias. Then they pointed behind him. The coffin lid moved. A long, pale hand emerged slowly from darkness. Then another. Then the woman crawled out. Her body bent unnaturally, joints snapping loudly as she dragged herself across the stone floor. Tangled black hair covered most of her face except for one enormous eye staring directly at Elias. Rusted hooks pierced her arms. Seawater poured endlessly from her mouth as though she were drowning constantly. And she smiled, not with lips, with dozens of tiny teeth splitting open beneath her skin. Father Benedict screamed as the faceless villagers rushed toward him. Elias grabbed the priest and ran through the tunnels while horrific sounds erupted behind them. Bones breaking, screaming, wet-tearing noises. The humming returned louder than before, echoing through every passage around them. They reached the cemetery staircase moments before Benedict suddenly froze. Something invisible grabbed his leg. The priest collapsed violently onto the stone floor while claw marks ripped across his chest. Elias tried pulling him free, but Benedict shoved him away. "Seal it!" the priest screamed. "Don't let her reach the village." Then darkness swallowed Benedict entirely. His screaming continued for several seconds, then stopped. Elias escaped alone. When dawn arrived, Graythorn looked abandoned. Houses stood empty. Doors swung open in the wind. Breakfast tables remained untouched inside homes as though villagers vanished mid-meal. Only silence remained, until Elias heard humming near the harbor. He followed the sound carefully through thick fog rolling across the docks. And there she stood, the woman from the tunnels. Hundreds of faceless villagers surrounded her motionlessly while staring toward the sea. Fishing boats drifted away from shore carrying figures wrapped in black cloth. Then the woman slowly turned toward Elias. This time her face had changed. It was Aline's, a missing girl from the village. The skin moved beneath her features like worms crawling underneath flesh. More faces appeared, changing constantly. Dozens of stolen identities twisting across her head. Children, men, women, all trapped inside her. She opened her mouth impossibly wide, and every stolen voice screamed together. The fog swallowed the harbor instantly. Elias ran. Nobody ever saw him again. Years later, travelers passing through northern England still hear strange humming near Graythorne during stormy nights. Locals refuse to approach the cliffs after sunset because figures without faces are sometimes seen standing silently near the shore staring toward the sea. And if someone hears knocking at their door after midnight followed by a woman whispering, "Please let me in," they never answer. Because the villagers say once she sees your face, she keeps it forever. Some secrets should stay buried. The story ends. Please subscribe the Era of Mysteries for more horror mysterious stories. Stay with the Era of Mysteries.